Nope, we're not doing that.
1, 2, 3, 4.
The really
Fun.
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 It's the really fun wow show. The really
Fun.
the really fun wow show. Oh, how fun.
Hello, and welcome to the Really Fun Wow Show. My name is Daren Thomas McGee. Thank you so much yet again for joining me. Today I am 40 years old. 40 summers, 40 winters, 40 springs, 40 falls. That's, I don't know about you, but that's incredible to me. I can't believe I'm 40. What the fuck? What does 40 mean to you? What 40 means to me? Wait, who did I just ask that to? Did I ask you that, or is that me asking myself a question? 40, certainly like when I was younger, 40 was the most old you could be. But man, when you're 40, you go, oh yeah, it's like kind of at a place where I still don't really know what I'm doing. I'm still kind of figuring it out. I'm realizing that there's a lot more to learn and experience. And, also to think that, you know, God willing, I live another 40 years. To think about back when I was 0 and to now that I'm 40, that's a long ass time. And so to think that I could potentially live another 40 years, I mean, it's exciting, but it's also like exhausting at the same time. Like, good God, I got to do a whole nother one of these over again. And also it's not as enjoyable. Well, that's not true. I don't know. I was going to say it's not that as enjoyable because, you know, in your first 40 years, your first 2 decades, you're very kind of, you're a lot more free of responsibility and obligation, and you just kind of have fun and you do whatever you want, and people take care of you, and there's that kind of alleviation of any real pressure to know who you are or what you're supposed to do. And then on the back 9 here, you kind of have that stuff. But maybe, I don't know, I feel like I'm right in the middle here. Let's just, to make it for math's sake, let's make it easy and say that I'll live to 80, right on the dot. I'd like to think that I'm kind of like at the hardest part, and that things will be getting easier. I'm seeing it very much as this kind of trajectory of like a triangle where I've reached the peak and to come back down to the other side. There's a quote that I want to read you that I should have had pulled up prior, but that's not how I do things. You spend your 20s figuring it out. You spend your 30s doing it. And you spend your 40s enjoying it. Now, I heard Casey Neistat say that. I don't know if you guys know who he is, but he's a YouTuber. He's, to me, hugely inspirational. He started at a pretty young age, and he moved to New York and just started making like video blogs. And this is kind of like early days pre-internet blogs, or vlogs, I should say. And he did these very DIY videos where just no budget, and made these compelling kind of short pieces about his life in New York. And it just like really, really resonated with me. And he said that quote recently in one of his videos. And then I tried to Google it to find out who said it. And I don't find any attribution. So I'm pretty sure he said it. So there we go. But to me, it was like knowing that I was turning 40 was like, shit, yeah, I'll take that as kind of some validation of having, what is the quote again? I only remember the 40s part because it's the one that I want to focus on. 20s figuring it out, 30s doing it, 40s enjoying it. So 20s figuring it out. Yeah, I mean, my 20s were, God, I can just like barely even remember them because they were really unsubstantive, and they just felt like kind of just a mess of drunkenness and partying, and really just like having a lot of fun and not taking care of myself, and yeah, just really not much to speak of. unfortunately. I didn't go to college, so that was like kind of one big thing that most people in their 20s have as a benchmark to what to what their 20s meant, was that kind of those college years. And I was listening to a podcast recently in regards to loneliness that a friend sent me, because that's been a big topic of discussion for me. And for those of you who listened to the episode on loneliness or on friends, thank you to those who've reached out to me and letting me know how much that episode resonated with you, because it's clearly like a very poignant topic, just based on how a lot of us are living in these kind of insular, atomized kind of existences where we're cut off from people and we don't really spend as much time as we maybe once had, and just the nature of this post-pandemic world, and the virtual world being really just so prevalent, and just all the factors that add to it are kind of, most of us feel that way, which is comforting in a way. But the idea that people will often look back and say that the college years were the most substantially important years of their life. And this podcast I listened to is the Ezra Klein show, where they talked about the reason that might be, because of that connection, because of that, the ease of friendships, and kind of what I spoke to on my podcast, which you can find wherever most podcasts are found. Just how easy it was for me to live in a house with friends. And it was just like, it never was any effort at all to be able to be in the company of others. So I think that probably my 20s were mainly that of like connection, and maybe not, of course, the most healthy way. Like I said, a little bit destructive, but man, it's fun to drink and do drugs for sure, especially in your 20s. So that was kind of, I think that was kind of the overarching theme of my 20s, was drinking, drugs, and friends. And yeah, that worked for sure. I can't at this point in my life as a 40-year-old look back and have any regrets and say like, I wish I would have done this differently with my 20s or anything like that. I'm taking everything as where I sit before you right now. This kind of a bit more mature, a bit more sure, confident, grounded, healthy, all of the things that all the attributes I can list about myself. Had I not done all those things leading up to it, I wouldn't be where I am. And so just kind of like in a broader cosmic sense of like how everything happens for a reason, like butterfly effect, all the factors that lead to where you are right now had to be the things that happened before. So no regrets at all. Not one. No, that's not true. But I don't know. I think that it's kind of, it's a weird thing, a regret, because, for me, like I said, if I can take a moment and appreciate where I am, like right now, like feel my body and feel how good I feel physically and mentally, then it's kind of hard. I don't know. I'll come back to that, I think, because there's certainly some things I can think of that I wish I would have done differently had I known. But had I known, that whole like kind of just, I don't know, paradox of human existence. And I think that it's difficult for sure. And I don't want that, like, the no regrets to come off as flippant and not be, have any sort of remorse for things I've done, that were less than, elevated and yeah. So anyway, that leads into my 30s, where, I floundered and still kind of continued on that, path of not having any sense of what I'm doing or what I'm supposed to be doing. And again, the doing, like, what do you mean doing? Like, what are you supposed to be doing? Is that a thing? Is that, what are you supposed to be doing to make money? Because that's something that is always where the road leads to in our society is, what are you doing that's making you money? And I was just making money. I was making money working jobs that I didn't like. And I think the big part of it was that there was no part of my life that was all right, well, I go to this shitty job every day, but then I come home and I insert, well, I was going to say insert any example of like what people do in their free time. And I didn't really have that. I had no outlet or anything like that. So, and also in my 30s, it was like a lot of moving around and a lot of like kind of ungroundedness, a lot of just like transientness. And I think that certainly delayed any kind of potential for settling in and having any kind of routine or environment that would facilitate for any real solid growth. Like, it'd be just like kind of pulling a plant out of a pot and putting it in a new pot every now and then and at a degree where the plant has no chance of growing. And so it wasn't until mid 30s that I landed here in Ojai and settled in and felt for the first time some level of like groundedness that I could sink into and feel like this is home. Get comfortable, get acclimated. This is the right place. And that's ultimately what led me to start my business, which still is always so weird to say because it doesn't feel like a business. It's just me showing up and doing what I want to do, like this podcast. Again, as we all know, this podcast does nothing for me financially. But it's still, I show up every week and I get in front of this microphone and I talk and I sound things out. And I'm so grateful that you all stick around and let me just talk into your ears. So thank you for that. So today I am 40 and I'm letting it sink in. It's still just, it's a real trip. And I think it's really only significant for me on this day because tomorrow I'll be 40 in one day. And not that that's not important, but at least like culturally you get this like thing, you get this day and people celebrate you and it's a milestone. And then nobody gives a shit. Like next year when I'm 41, no one's going to care. And I mean, people probably barely care that I'm 40 right now. So it's certainly like, I'm really trying to like, let it sink in and be like, yep, this is it. Because, nobody cares about you. So, to seize an opportunity to celebrate something like a milestone of 40, I feel this feels the most significant to me because I'm not really one to celebrate birthdays all that much. And this one I've made a little bit more effort to say, hey, this is really significant. So let's pay attention to it and let's evaluate and let's see where we're at. And I just feel really good about where I'm at right now. Like I don't feel that kind of, certainly as a dad too, like to not feel like just a sad, out of shape dad who just, can really feel the age as a kind of almost like a detrimental thing where to me, I'm like, I'm motivated. I'm like, man, this is sweet. I'm about to start a new decade of where I have some gray hairs and I'm like a little older and a little bit wiser. And I don't know, it's feeling really, really good. So that's that. I'm 40. Daren McGee is 40 years old. So I've been thinking about being more in touch with my body and exercising and meditating and trying to like really drop in to my body, which was always something that was really difficult, even as a concept to be in your body. And for me, I'm doing that more than ever, and I'm paying attention, and I notice this just how insanely complex our bodies and the systems that dictate them are. And also even more of a trip is our mind-body connection, which I noticed recently. I was driving somewhere and I was excited and I was nervous. I was feeling, therefore thinking, just trying to like trace this in my own experience here, but I was thinking about how excited I was, which triggered a feeling, which is excitement and like kind of an anticipation. And that triggered a response in my body, which was perspiration in my armpits. Now, the level of complexity that has to go through to yield a result where the mechanism needs to produce a liquid that then exits through my armpit. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? How much of a trip that is? Like, I'm sorry, what? It does what now? Okay. And that also that made me think, this was clearly like something I was excited about. And so it wasn't like an unwelcomed feeling. So it was just like, oh wow, look at this. I'm really like, I'm excited right now. And so I am sweating. And so it was just all like, it was all good. But then I think about how often unconsciously we're having thoughts that are triggering responses in our body that aren't as kind of innocuous as a sweaty armpit, and I think about how cancer is formed and just general unwellness and illness and fatigue or a headache or any way that it could manifest. And oftentimes I think we just kind of put that onto our bodies and say like, that's our body doing something that I need to now take some medication for or do something to alleviate. And instead kind of maybe potentially tracking it back and saying like, what am I thinking about right now that's causing my body to do this thing? Because the body's not emotional. The body's not like scared about something. That's all in our thoughts. That's all us playing out a scenario, imagining something, fearing something, being excited or scared or anticipatory or stressed about something. That's all generated in our minds and our thoughts and our brain's capacity to imagine. And I know this isn't like breakthrough shit that I'm talking about right now, but it's become very, very clear to me about how potentially harmful thoughts can be or distracting and overwhelming to the point where we are deteriorating the vessels that house these thoughts. It's a real trip for me to consider. And I think that there's a lot of value in really kind of having a more understanding relationship as to the connection between your mind and your body. Like it's almost akin to just eating junk food is to think junky thoughts. It's going to produce a deterioration in your physical makeup. And it's just like, it's kind of a shame because our bodies are really our only vestige of humanness that is what makes us a human is this human body. When our bodies are dead, funny way to say that. I don't know this to be true, but our level of consciousness is not housed in a body anymore. Sorry, this is all like a 15-year-old who just smoked weed for the first time level of thoughts here. So bear with me. But it's just really fascinating to me. And it's become really much more clear now that I spend as much time as I do meditating to really like close my eyes and be in this kind of for all intents and purposes, not considering my body in that context, because when I'm meditating, my body is superfluous. It's not like I have to do a handstand to meditate and be like, okay, now I need to be aware of like holding my own weight up. Like you just kind of, you ideally you forget that you're in a body and then you're just kind of left with your own thoughts. But then within that, you want to be the separate one who be the observer of those thoughts. And so there's the thoughts having their thoughts, and then there's the you that is witnessing the thoughts. And so I'd like to think that when your body's dead, that brain that is kind of running all the time and thinking about what you need to do later on or what you did yesterday that you regret, that dies too. And so what's left is the observer. Again, it's this unobjective kind of loving witness. This kind of just doesn't really have an opinion one way or the other, just kind of sits in the room while this crazy brain just goes off and has its experience. And I think that that's really a good place to be as I get older and older, to continue to separate from my own thoughts, because they're much like kind of at this point feel like just this autonomous function that's happening. Like I don't think about my liver processing. I don't know what the liver does. So it's like my heart beating with blood. You know, I don't think about that. That just happens. And so to not think about your brain thinking, it's just yet again another bodily process that's none of my business, basically. So yeah, in this book that I've been reading for almost a year now, and not because it's just kind of illustrates how slowly I read and that I don't really put that much time into it. But this book, Letting Go, which is it here? No, it's at my house. It was written by a guy whose name I don't know, which you think somebody who's been reading a book for a year, they would remember the person's name who wrote it, but no, not at all. But anyway, it's around this topic of letting go, and it's it's got like a subtitle too, and I'm so bad. Letting go. It's not like the art of surrender or something about surrender. I'm so stupid. But anyway, in the book, he talks about an example of somebody who has schizophrenia, and they've studies have shown, or they have evidence of, the multiple personalities within somebody who has schizophrenia, that those personalities can take on different ailments. So for example, let's say if somebody with schizophrenia has a personality that is allergic to peanuts and the other personality isn't. What? So that, to me, when I read that, I'm like, oh my God, our minds are kind of too powerful. Like they're run on their own without any checks and balances. They can produce some horrible results in our physical body. That your mind is powerful enough to trigger an allergic reaction to a food. Just take that in for a second. And I think that done positively, like I wonder if there's any example of somebody who thinks so positively. I guess the opposite of that would be that if you're not drawing yourself into a mental state that would trigger an allergic reaction in your body, that the opposite of that would be there's no allergic reactions. You don't suffer allergies. Your body runs at a more of an ideal, optimal state, I suppose, right? I mean, that would stand to reason. I don't think that you necessarily garner superpowers, but I think bodies have kind of a baseline functionality to them. And if you have a positive train of thought, that your body as well, that seems to make the most sense to me. And I guess in my own experience, when you also do what your body wants to do, what it's built for, which is it has muscles and it has ligaments and it has all these kind of areas that that kind of require maintenance and action. And so whether that's exercise or stretching or just giving it what it wants. It's like I remember, this is like sort of a weird example, but years and years ago, this guy told me that cars like to be driven, and as if they're this kind of, autonomous creature. But that if you're not driving a car, then the liquids, pardon me, I know nothing about cars, the car liquids, about those, that they're not circulating through the engine, and therefore it's does a disservice to your car. So you want to drive your car frequently to keep those liquids, those car liquids, flowing through the engine. And that seems to, that makes a lot of sense to me, that would be the case for the human body too. The human body wants to move. It's designed this way. And, clearly there's evidence that shows without question, a stagnant body is going to atrophy and just not be well. And so the idea of stretching it and hydrating it, giving your body the liquids that it, much like an engine, needs. All that stuff to me, I guess to me, is like, now that all makes sense to me, and all that's becoming like really obvious to me and important. I just got distracted by my ceiling. It was like, is it wet or is that just wood grain? Stay with us, McGee. You're literally in the middle of a podcast here. So yeah, I guess that all that's to say is that there's a new awareness for me around the connection between the mind and the body, and how important that is. And as I get older and start to potentially suffer the degradation, not potentially, definitely suffer the degradation of an aging body, that now it's, now more than ever, it's really important that I stay in shape and stay active and keep at it. Yeah. So I think that's it. I'm kind of hungry, and I love you guys so much, and I really, really appreciate you, and thank you for just being connected to me in this way. It's something that I really value and really, really appreciate. So thank you all, truly, 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 and happy birthday to me. I love you.
That was the really fun wow show. All right, we're done. Oh, yep. Okay, bye.